You are wearing something right now, probably several things. You put them on this morning without thinking about it, but the invention you are wearing, the thing that covers most of your body, is only 170,000 years old. For most of human history, everyone you ever descended from was completely naked, and they were not embarrassed about it. How do we know when humans started wearing clothes? We asked an insect. The body louse, a tiny parasite that lives exclusively in clothing, evolved from head lice exactly when humans started wearing garments regularly enough for the insect to adapt. DNA sequencing pinned that moment to roughly 170,000 years ago. A louse told us the date, and that date changed everything we thought we knew about human evolution. This is The Old Human, the Season 1 finale. 7 episodes on the human body, how we walked, what we smoked, how we slept, how we handled hunger, what we did all day, how we survived predators, and how we healed without medicine. Today, the one invention that changed where humans could live, what we looked like, and how we saw each other. Why did ancient humans start wearing clothes? If you have watched other videos about the history of clothing, you have probably seen the same thing. Fashion timelines, Victorian dresses, the evolution of the suit. This is not that video. This is about the moment a naked ape looked at an animal skin and thought, I am going to put that on my body, and how that single decision changed human biology forever. By the end of this, you will never look at your clothes the same way. We evolved in Africa, hot, tropical. The human body is the best sweating machine on the planet. Millions of sweat glands across nearly every inch of skin. Evaporative cooling requires exposed skin. For the first 250,000 years of Homo sapiens' existence, clothing would have been a liability, not an advantage. You do not need a coat in the savannah. You need sweat. Picture it. Your ancestors, every single one of them, all the way back, walking, running, hunting, gathering, sleeping, living, completely naked, and it was not weird. It was not shameful. It was simply the default state of being human. The human body was designed for this. The idea of covering it would have seemed as strange to them as going naked in public would seem to you. And yet, the modern barefoot running movement, the cold exposure enthusiasts, the people trying to eat like hunter-gatherers. There is an entire community of people trying to reconnect with the ancestral human body, but almost none of them ask the most obvious question. What about clothes? Why do we wear them? And what did wearing them do to us? Here is one of the most elegant pieces of scientific detective work ever done. Head lice live in hair. Body lice live in clothing. They are separate species, but DNA analysis proves body lice evolved from head lice. The moment they diverged, the moment a mutation let a head louse survive on fabric instead of hair, that is the moment humans started wearing clothes. You cannot have body lice without clothing for them to live in. A team led by David Reed at the University of Florida sequenced louse DNA from around the world. They found that body lice diverged from head lice roughly 170,000 years ago, give or take a few tens of thousands of years. That means humans started wearing clothing regularly at least that long ago, maybe earlier, but definitely by then. A parasite told us the answer to a question no fossil could ever answer, and here is why that date matters. 170,000 years ago is roughly when the first Homo sapiens were beginning to move out of Africa into cooler climates, into the Middle East, eventually into Europe and Asia. Clothing was not a fashion choice. It was the technology that made human expansion possible. Without it, we would all still be in Africa. The human species was contained by temperature, and clothing broke the container open. Neanderthals got there first. They were living in Ice Age Europe hundreds of thousands of years before Homo sapiens arrived. Temperatures of 40 below zero, glaciers covering half the continent. They did not survive this naked. They had clothing, simple fur wraps and hides, processed with stone scrapers that archaeologists have found at Neanderthal sites dating back 300,000 years. Those stone scrapers, called hide scrapers, are some of the oldest tools ever found. A Neanderthal would scrape every last bit of flesh and fat from an animal hide, then stretch it, dry it, and soften it by chewing or working it with their hands. A single hide could take days to process. It was dull, repetitive, essential work, and it kept them alive through winters that would kill an unprotected human in under an hour. But scraped hides could only make drapes and wraps, simple coverings held with leather cords or bone pins. Warm, yes, but bulky, inefficient. There is a limit to what you can do with a rectangle of fur and a string to make real clothing, clothing that fits, clothing that traps heat efficiently, clothing that lets you move freely in an Arctic blizzard. You need something more. Pause for a moment. Look at what you are wearing. Every seam, every stitch, every fitted curve. None of it is possible without one invention, the needle. A tiny sliver of bone with a hole drilled through one end. That is it. That is the invention that made everything you are wearing possible, and it appeared roughly 40,000 years ago, changing human history more than the wheel ever did. Bone needles with carved eyes appear in the archaeological record around 40,000 years ago, first in Siberia and northern China, then spreading across Ice Age Eurasia. These were not crude tools. They were precisely made, thin, sharp, with carefully drilled eyes small enough to pass sinew thread through leather, making one required skill, patience, and a clear understanding of what the finished product needed to do. With a needle and thread, humans could make fitted clothing for the first time. Sleeves that hugged the arms, pant legs that did not flap in the wind, hoods that sealed around the face. Every seam trapped a layer of warm air against the skin. The difference in thermal efficiency between a draped hide and a sewn garment is enormous. This was not a minor improvement. This was the difference between surviving a Siberian winter and freezing to death in one. By 30,000 years ago, humans in northern latitudes were wearing fitted parkas with hoods, leggings, and fur boots, an entire cold weather system made from multiple animals, multiple layers, engineered for survival. The wardrobe of an Ice Age hunter was more sophisticated than most people imagine, and it had to be. Bad clothing meant death. There was no room for fashion mistakes at 40 below zero. But here is what no one tells you about the invention of clothing. It did not just protect humans from the environment, it changed what humans were, biologically, permanently. This is the part of the story that most videos skip, because it is not about fashion. It is about evolution. The first clothing materials were animal hides, then furs, then something remarkable, woven plant fibers. In Zudzawana Cave in Georgia, archaeologists found twisted and dyed flax fibers dating back 30,000 years. Humans were weaving plant textiles thousands of years before they invented farming. They were making fabric before they were making bread. The oldest complete outfit ever discovered belongs to Ötzi the Iceman, a man who died in the Alps 5,300 years ago and was frozen in a glacier until 1991. His outfit is extraordinary. A bearskin hat, a cloak of woven grass, a goatskin coat with strips of fur sewn in alternating patterns for flexibility, goatskin leggings, and deerskin shoes stuffed with grass for insulation. 5 different animals, multiple layers, tailored to fit his body. This was prehistoric high fashion, and it worked so well it kept him alive in the Alps. The oldest shoes ever found are sagebrush bark sandals from Fort Rock Cave in Oregon, over 10,000 years old. But Ötzi's shoes are an engineering marvel. Deerskin outer for durability, bearskin sole for grip, woven grass netting inside for structure, and loose grass stuffed in for insulation, the prehistoric equivalent of a thermal sock. Shoe technology predates cities, writing, and agriculture, and yet, here is the strange thing. Archaeological evidence strongly suggests that humans were decorating their bodies with paint, shells, beads, and ochre long before they were wearing what we would call clothing. Red ochre crayons for body painting date back over 100,000 years. Shell beads appear 70,000 years ago. Decoration came first, functional clothing came later. Humans wanted to look interesting before they needed to stay warm, and once clothing existed, it immediately became a social signal. The person wearing the rarest fur, the most elaborate beadwork, the most skilled stitching, that person had status, power, influence. This is not a modern phenomenon. The connection between clothing and social hierarchy is older than civilization. The first fashion show was a campsite, and the first designer was whoever could sew the straightest seam. Clothing became identity. It told everyone who you were before you opened your mouth, what group you belonged to, what environment you came from, what you had survived. An Arctic seal hunter in seal intestine parka, a desert dweller in woven plant fiber, a temperate forest hunter in deer hide. 3 humans, 3 completely different identities, expressed through what they wore. The first thing any human ever saw about another human was their clothing. A single decorated garment could represent hundreds of hours of work, gathering the shells, drilling the holes, threading the sinew, sewing each bead individually onto the hide. A fully decorated ceremonial garment was like a book. It told a story the wearer wanted you to read. Before writing, before cave paintings, before anything we would recognize as art, humans painted themselves and what they wore. Clothing was the first canvas. And now the part that changes everything. Clothing did not just cover the human body, it changed the human body. Once humans started wearing clothes, thick body hair was no longer necessary for warmth, so over thousands of generations we lost it. You have fewer body hairs than almost any other primate, and you can thank the invention of clothing for that. The garment reshaped the species. Even more profoundly, clothing blocked sunlight. When humans moved north wearing clothes, their skin received dramatically less UV radiation. Less UV means less vitamin D production. Less vitamin D means weaker bones, weaker immune systems, and higher infant mortality. Over thousands of years, natural selection favored lighter skin because lighter skin produces vitamin D more efficiently in low-light conditions. The invention of clothing is one of the reasons human skin color varies across the planet. A piece of sewn hide changed the color of humanity. You are wearing something right now. I am, too. We all are. And yet almost no one stops to ask what clothing actually took from us, because every invention comes with a trade-off. Fire gave us safety and took our night vision. Agriculture gave us food security and took our height. What did clothing take? Vitamin D. Your ancestors got it for free, from the sun on their skin. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human body produced all the vitamin D it needed through direct sun exposure. Clothing blocked that. Indoor life blocked it further. Now you buy vitamin D in pills because the sun cannot reach most of your skin most of the time. The supplement industry exists partially because we started wearing clothes. Your skin has a microbiome, billions of beneficial bacteria that evolved to live on exposed human skin. Clothing created a barrier, less air circulation, less sun exposure, less direct contact with the natural environment. We changed the ecosystem on our own bodies so completely that we do not even know what we lost, because no one studied the skin microbiome before clothing altered it. We are running an experiment on ourselves with no control group, and the most profound loss, touch. Skin-to-skin contact releases oxytocin. It reduces cortisol. It regulates heart rate and blood pressure. Your ancestors experienced this constantly, sleeping in piles, working side by side, living in physical contact with each other from birth to death. Clothing created a barrier between bodies, and modern life turned that barrier into isolation. The loneliness epidemic has many causes, but one of them might be the simple fact that we stopped touching each other, and yet they put it on anyway. Not because they wanted to cover their bodies, not because of shame, not because of fashion, because the alternative was freezing to death. The first person to wrap a hide around their body was not making a fashion statement. They were trying not to die. And that decision, repeated across millions of humans over thousands of generations, changed everything. Your ancestor owned 2 outfits. They wore one, while the other dried after being washed in a river. Their entire wardrobe fit in a leather bag. You own 40 things: shirts, pants, jackets, shoes, and you stood in front of your closet this morning thinking you had nothing to wear. The problem is not your clothes. The problem is that abundance has broken your ability to feel satisfied with anything. The ancient clothing scoreboard is remarkable. Warmth, 10 out of 10. Survival, 10. Identity, 9. Status, 8. Craft, 10. Biome friendly, 10. Total, 57 out of 60. Clothing did exactly what it needed to do. It kept humans alive in every environment on Earth, and it did it without factories, without plastic, without destroying the planet. The modern clothing scoreboard tells a different story. Warmth, 10. Survival, 0. Identity, 9. Status, 10. Craft, 3. Because fast fashion is cheap, not well made. Biome friendly, 2. Because polyester is plastic and your skin cannot breathe through it. Total, 34 out of 60. We turned survival technology into disposable fashion. And somewhere along the way, we forgot why we put clothes on in the first place. Before you complain about your jeans being uncomfortable, your ancestor wore the same unwashed animal hide for 6 months through an ice age winter. It smelled like a dead animal because it was a dead animal. It was crawling with lice. It was stiff with dried sweat and frozen in the mornings. And it was the only thing between them and death. Your jeans are fine. There is an entire community of people doing cold plunges and ice baths to reconnect with their ancestral resilience. Wim Hof breathing, cold exposure therapy, and somewhere in the ancestral timeline, a naked human who spent their entire life cold, who dreamed of warmth and probably cried with relief when they first wrapped a fur around their shoulders, is watching a modern human voluntarily jump into a frozen lake and wondering what went wrong. There is irony here, beautiful, expensive irony. Let us update the chalkboard for the final time this season. 8 episodes, 8 stories about the human body, travel, smoking, sleep, hunger, daily life, predators, medicine, and now, clothing. Season 1 of The Old Human is complete. Every slot has a checkmark, the body has been explored, and a line is drawn beneath the row. In the Museum of Lost Human Knowledge, the complete Season 1 exhibit. 8 frames in a row. 8 things ancient humans knew about their bodies that we have forgotten. The story of the human body is not the story of what we gained. It is the story of what we lost. And remembering that story, that is the entire point of this channel. 8 episodes, 300,000 years, 1 species, travel, how we crossed the planet, smoking, what we inhaled in the firelight, sleep, how we rested in piles, hunger, how we survived without food, daily life, what we did with our freedom, predators, how we became the hunters, medicine, how we healed without doctors, clothing, what we put on and what it put on us, the complete picture of the ancient human body, and it is only half the story. The old human teaches us that clothing was never just about warmth, it was the invention that changed where humans could live, what we looked like, how we saw each other, and how we saw ourselves. The first person to put on an animal hide had no idea they were reshaping the human species, but they were. Every invention reshapes the inventor. Clothing reshaped you. And this is the part that changes how you will see your clothes from now on. Every morning when you get dressed, you are participating in a ritual that began 170,000 years ago. A naked human wrapped an animal skin around their body to survive the cold and started a chain reaction that changed human skin color, human body hair, human vitamin D production, human social status, and human identity. You are the end of that chain, for now. The human body is the most adaptable thing in the known universe. Naked under the African sun, clothed in the Arctic night, mountains, deserts, jungles, tundra, every environment, every climate, every challenge, and we are still here. 8 episodes on the body, 8 things we forgot, and we have only just begun. Season 2 of The Old Human goes deeper. into the mind and society. We have explored the body. Now we explore what ancient humans did with their minds. Episode 9. Alcohol. Before bars, before bottles, before anyone wrote down a recipe, ancient humans were getting drunk, on purpose, for thousands of years. What did they drink? Why? And what did they know about intoxication that we have completely forgotten? Season 1 is complete. The body, travel, smoking, sleep, hunger, daily life, predators, medicine, clothing, done. Season 2 is the mind and society, alcohol, communication, relationships, death, race, women, the mind, and animals. 8 more episodes. 8 more things we have forgotten. The body was only the beginning. The mind is where it gets strange. If you made it this far, you just completed Season 1 of The Old Human. You now know more about the ancient human body than 99% of people on Earth. You know how we walked across continents, what we smoked around the fire, how we slept in piles, how we survived famine, what we did with free time, how we faced predators, how we healed without medicine, and why we put on clothes. Subscribe. Season 2 is coming. 300,000 years, 1 body, 8 stories. But the human story is not just about the body. It is about what happened inside the mind, what we believed, how we loved, how we grieved, how we got drunk, and how we found God. That is Season 2, and it begins soon. This has been The Old Human.